Good morning, everybody. This is Yin Yang with Morsels of a Thought number 1286. And we are on Wednesday, Words and Wisdom Wednesday with Wickedly Smart Women by Anjel B. Hartwell. We are in chapter 10. Ms. Kathi Sohn, I think it's Sohn. Let's see. This is her photo. And let's up. Can you see me? No? There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay. Anyway. Ms. Kathi Sohn retired in 2020 from a 36-year Department of Defense career, which included work in Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. She began her career with 4 years in the U.S. Army. Ms. Sohn graduated with the highest distinction and the prestigious award from the Naval War College Master's Program and holds a Master's in Conflict Analysis and Resolution from George Mason University. After the 2019 death of her beloved husband, David William Sohn, she decided to dedicate her time to her 2 young children and to promoting the powerful healing work created by David called the body memory process. For over 30 years, this work has created positive changes for clients facing health, relationship, and prosperity issues. The body memory process facilitates the discovery and release of limiting and sometimes destructive core beliefs created at birth and in early childhood. Ms. Sohn created a multimedia course, Discover Your Childhood Vows, Change Your Life, and is currently writing a book on the body memory process. Contact with Kathi at https://bodymemoryprocess.com. Okay, so her chapter is called Wounded Healer. Here we go. You want to read this out loud? I think so, huh? Wounded Healer, Chapter 10. Choice is to the soul what water is to the body. It can nourish and cleanse us, and there's no life without it. We all constantly choose what to think, say, do, and believe, sometimes from our conscious mind and too often from the unconscious habit mind. If I were to pull the thread back to the initial choice that helped make me who I am today, I would find myself back in the time of my first breath in this world. My life began in 1961 as an emergency when my distraught birth mother caused my severely premature birth at the end of her second trimester. All 1.8 pounds of my tiny body chose in that incubator to thrive, despite what had happened to me. There were some negative effects from my long time in the incubator, and they were ultimately a blessing. It was through healing my own trauma that I found my life's mission to share an amazing healing method with the world. When I was about 7 years old, I remember being in the doctor's office, frozen in terror as the white lab coat-clad man sat in his chair waiting for my answer to his question. I just stared at him until my mother broke the silence to respond. The doctor snapped his gaze to her and said, "Ma'am, I asked your daughter the question." "But she's not answering you," my mother replied in exasperation. After that day, I became comfortable talking one-on-one to individuals, but speaking in front of a group gave me that same feeling of terror I felt in the doctor's office. I know that public speaking is a common fear, but this was gripping dread of just announcing my name. As soon as I knew it was going to be my turn to talk, I would get a huge rush of adrenaline and my heart would start pounding. Once I felt all the attention on me, I would nearly pass out from the overwhelming fear. My audience evolved from fellow students to employees when I became a manager and needed to lead staff meetings. The anxiety I felt was compounded by not wanting to appear nervous in front of my employees. My anxiety lessened a bit once I joined the Toastmasters to get practice speaking in front of a supportive, familiar group. The problem ultimately persisted, and I would often get bright red blotches on my face and neck when I was in front of a group that I found intimidating. Then one day, I discovered that my attention anxiety was rooted in the trauma of my earliest days as a rejected, extremely premature baby in intensive care. I was peered at very often in my incubator by the medical staff, some either thinking or saying aloud that they didn't believe I would make it. My body might have been tiny and frail, but it indeed recorded in my body memory. They watch me to see when I'm going to die. I'm certain this was also the reason the doctor in the white lab coat frightened me. Being the center of attention in a public speaking scenario would key this up because being critically watched first occurred for me in a life and death situation. A powerful new healing method helped me discover the root cause of my extreme fear and then taught me how to free myself from it. The result was complete relief from the gripping anxiety, and now public speaking is an easy and very fulfilling part of my work. In the years before I discovered the root cause of my social anxiety, I became increasingly withdrawn. I was 33 years old with a string of failed relationships, partly because I was afraid of commitment. My adoptive mother was very loving and was also extremely protective and emotionally enmeshed with me. She never thought any of my boyfriends were good enough, and I came to value her opinion over my own, sabotaging relationship after relationship. One day, I finally surrendered to letting God be in control of relationships in my life. I could feel the shift in my body when I finally admitted I was lost and lonely. I had always been very spiritual and willing to let God oversee almost everything in my life. I guess I figured my mother was in charge of my relationships, so God didn't need to be. About 6 months after this shift, I met David William Sohn, who I would learn was the creator of an amazing healing method called the body memory process. He was brought to my doorstep on the 4th of July in 1994 by some friends, one of whom had said to me for months, "You've really got to meet this guy. You're perfect for each other." David had also been encouraged to meet this girl in the same way, and now it finally happened. You might be wondering if my mother liked David. She didn't. However, I finally found the courage to tell her that he was the one and I was not going to change my mind. My choice to surrender to a higher power and to trust my intuition finally brought me my soulmate, and in May of 1997, we were married. Not long after David came into my life, I learned that I had been adopted. I was in my 30s and had no idea I was talking to my brother on the phone one day. I was shocked. Yet suddenly a lot of things made sense. My adoptive mother had told me I was born prematurely, but that is all I remember as significant regarding my birth. It wasn't until David and I were married that I finally brought up this emotionally charged subject with my mother. Whenever I would go home to visit, it never seemed like the right time to bring it up. And honestly, I was worried about what Mom's reaction to my questions would be. One particularly beautiful day, I was home on a weekend visit with my parents without David. I was out on a walk that Saturday when I got a sudden, powerful urge to talk to Mom about my adoption. I can't explain why I was filled with such courage. I just knew the right time had come to get everything out in the open, and I could hardly wait to get home. When we talked, my mother teared up and told me the story of how she and my father had been unable to have children of their own after trying for about 10 years. They decided to adopt and sought to give a loving home to children who had been deeply traumatized at the beginning of their lives. Mom told me she didn't know a lot about my birth mother, but she was aware that she had attempted a home abortion at about 6 months gestation. My mother said that when my two brothers and I each reached the age of 7, she had read us a book titled The Chosen Baby. I remembered the book and that I loved to read it over and over. Thinking back, I don't ever remember realizing it was about me. My mother said that she had agonized over the right time to tell me, again, that I was adopted after I said something when I was about 13 that made her realize I didn't know. As she sat there, tears of guilt streaming down her face, I shared with her that I too had agonized over when to bring up the subject once I had the discussion with my brother. I told her that I understood completely what she had gone through and that it made me love her and Dad even more. Within about a year of this discussion, my mother learned she had progressed breast cancer and she passed away quickly after her surgery because the cancer had metastasized. She elected to not have chemotherapy or radiation and was gone within 10 months of her diagnosis. By this time, I had learned a lot about the body memory process and had done the work on myself to heal my social anxiety. When David and I met, he was beginning to write a book on the work at the encouragement of many of his clients. Over the next few years, David would write during the day and I would edit when I came home from my job with the Department of Defense. I gained a deep understanding of the work and saw how it helped clients to heal diseases, improve relationships, and become open to more prosperity in their lives because they discovered and then released deeply entrenched ideas about themselves that weren't true. Escaping the Labyrinth was published to explain a powerful way to set people free from their past. Up until about the age of 7, children create core beliefs about themselves, others, and the world. The problem is they are still very immature. The others around them are but a handful of caregivers and family, and their world is extremely small. Children are very egocentric and not yet logical, so it is easy for them to draw these conclusions based on highly emotional and often traumatic events. Even highly emotional positive events can create a belief. Consider a scenario of a 3-year-old girl sitting on her daddy's knee. She loves her daddy's attention, which is sometimes hard to get, and he suddenly leans in close and says lovingly, You'll always be my little girl. She might file this away as I'll always be your little girl, which seems innocuous for the child. Then when she grows up and suddenly starts acting like a little girl in the presence of a powerful male, such as her boss, difficulties can ensue. Research has proven that babies in the womb are intelligent and can form beliefs while still in utero. This happens as well at birth and during the formative years. When David was 14 years old, he had a near-death experience during a struggle with double staph pneumonia. Following his recovery, he was told by doctors he would never be truly well because of the effect of the disease on his lungs. David railed against this and after college began a quest to discover all available ideas related to a level of wellness that was more than merely the absence of disease. David created the body memory process based on the mind-body connection, the intelligence of babies in the womb, the fact that children form core beliefs before the age of 7, and the power of beliefs to create our reality. David called these core beliefs vows because, like wedding vows, they make a powerful statement to live by. For the 25 years that David and I were together, I continued to use the work to discover and heal other decisions I had made in my early life. I found that I had vows like everything is my fault and I have to take care of myself. In October 2019, David passed away and I found myself suddenly a widow and a single mom. In 2009, David and I had a son, Benjamin, who is on the autism spectrum, and we had Sarah in 2013. The family and I were in Hawaii for what was to be my last assignment with the Department of Defense before I retired when David became ill and went quickly downhill. I knew I couldn't break down and give up. I needed to gather all my strength and take action to support 2 grieving children. While quickly planning retirement for the end of the school year and navigating a global pandemic to sell my property in Hawaii, I was buying a home in Alabama before setting foot in it. One day in early 2021, I looked up and realized we were well settled in our new home, new school, and new town. After working full-time for 36 years, what was I to do with my newly found time? It didn't take long for me to decide to pick up the torch called the body memory process and ensure that my late husband's life's work didn't fade away. During the first year, I focused on establishing an online presence and refining a course that David and I had previously begun putting together. My plan was to promote the work by having a website and dipping my toe into the social media advertising world to let people know the course was available. I thought that I could just sit behind the scenes and let the internet do the job for me. By the end of the year, I was not satisfied with my results and turned inward for guidance on how to move forward. What came from my meditation was a realization that this work is transformative and that it is greatly needed by many people everywhere who had been suffering from trauma even before the pandemic hit. I knew that playing small was not the answer and decided at that point to begin doing what I would have thought to be impossible before experiencing the body memory process. I made the choice to begin speaking on podcasts, on webinars, in homemade videos, and in front of live audiences to spread the word about the work. I was no longer dipping in my toe. I made the choice to be all in. I have since mused that when I was working for the Department of Defense, I wasn't allowed to talk to the media. I was finally able to step into the light and embrace talking to the public. It is not a coincidence that I experienced such a high dose of trauma in the womb and at birth, to then grow up and discover my life's mission to help others free themselves of the long term impact of early life trauma. David used to say that people with difficult beginnings can become a wounded healer because their capacity to heal can be magnified by their own healing journey. I continued to make choices to shape the world I want for myself and my children, and many of them are choices to forgive. I have forgiven David for leaving me to raise our young children alone, knowing he is always by my side. I have forgiven my birth mother because she did the best that she could with what she had at the time. She gave me tremendous gifts of strength and tenacity that have served me well through the years and will continue to do so. I have also forgiven my adoptive mother and thank her for teaching me the importance of trusting my own intuition, finding my own voice, and not being afraid to tell what I know to be the truth. What I know to be truth. Okay, so that was her chapter, Wickedly Smart Women, Trusting Intuition, Taking Action, and Transforming Worlds by Anjel B. Hartwell. All right, this was Wednesday. Oh, goodness gracious. The 10th of July, and obviously I'm not on time every day yet, so we shall try again tomorrow. Okay, old Kinderhack.